Hello, and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers with whatever writing ailments you might have.
Whether it's related to your craft or your career, we can help.
Are you ready for your session?
The doctors are in. In this session, we get in the game with David Stassen, showrunner of Netflix's hit sports-themed comedy Running Point that stars Kate Hudson as the president of the LA Waves basketball team. David brings a history of sports television producing to the show, having worked as a producer on ESPN's Around the Horn and Rome is Burning. David expanded his narrative experience, joining the Mindy Project, where he wrote, produced, and directed. He's also known for the Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart action comedy Central Intelligence. Welcome to the show, David.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is really exciting. And Roshni and I, both having journalism backgrounds, found it really interesting about how you spent years producing sports commentary for ESPN. And, how is that history with sports and that producing drive you into doing something narrative and comedy? How did that happen?
Well, I came into sports producing almost, it was really thanks to a letter from the student loan department.
Oh my goodness.
I was finishing grad school. I got an MFA in screenwriting at USC, and I was about to finish, and I even got a literary manager, and I was ready to start my writing career. And this was way back 20 years ago, probably. And then I got this letter saying you owe tens of thousands of dollars for your graduate school. And so what did I do? With my MFA and my new literary manager, I immediately took a job in Washington, D.C., editing sports highlights, because that's what a good screenwriter does. So it was really just, I've always been a huge sports fan, and it was a great opportunity, and I loved working in DC for, pardon the interruption, and Around the Horn. But after about a year and a half, I really wanted to get back to LA and get back to screenwriting, and so then I was able to do the Rome is Burning. We shot it in Orange County, and I did that every morning, and then every afternoon I would drive back from Orange County at about 2 p.m, and I'd go over to my writing partner Ike's house, and we would write all afternoon and evening. And that was kind of my life until we had a couple of small successes, and I could focus on writing full time.
Oh, so the sports thing was almost like a detour, and you'd always planned to be a screenwriter.
Exactly. Yeah, I moved to LA in 2001 and was here for 2 or 3 years. Then did a year and a half in DC, then back to LA. But the plan was always screenwriting. But I mean, I'm such a big sports fan that it was a really, really fun job and kind of easy work, and the kind of work you don't have to take home with you. So it allowed me to still be creative on the side.
So then backing up before that, before you went to UCLA and got your MFA, what drove you to want to become a writer there? And what did you do stuff in like high school or as a kid?
Yeah, looking back, I was always kind of into creative writing. Like I would, take any kind of English class assignment in middle school or high school and sort of turn it into like a short story or something fun. And then Ike and I wrote every year in our high school newspaper, there's a senior who writes the comedy column. And Ike and I wrote the comedy column for our high school newspaper our senior year. And we both finished our freshman year of college and kind of had the same realization that we wanted to, get into entertainment somehow. I realized, I've been recording Seinfeld on my VCR in high school, and I have this like obsession with sort of TV and comedy and film that I didn't really realize until I got to college. And then so I knew that was probably going to be my path early on when I went to Northwestern outside of Chicago.
Oh, the Midwest. We're both Midwesterners here.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was going to say, you said my name like a proper Midwesterner, like a good person with German roots.
I'm in Cleveland, actually.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, yeah, because a lot of people say Stassen, which is the Chicago way, but like the Wisconsin people always say Stassen, like the proper like Northern European pronunciation.
We also had a little bit of help.
Yeah, I
So,
can see
thanks to your
that.
publicist.
Yes,
I was gonna say, you keep mentioning your writing partner, Ike. Would that be Ike Barinholtz?
that would be yes.
So we were wondering about that because we noticed that you worked on the Mindy Project, which he also worked on, and then now you guys are working together on Running Point. So it sounds like you guys go way back.
We do. We met in about 1986 at a summer camp in Chicago, and so we've been friends for 40 years. And then it was so we knew each other in growing up, and then he came to my high school, so we've been best friends since we were freshmen in high school. But we played basketball against each other in middle school, and yeah, he just we have all the same friends and all the still like all the same best friends from growing up, and yeah, we've known each other a long time, and we moved out here together, and we both he was a bus boy, I worked at a front desk and parked cars, and we did all the crappy LA jobs you do when you're starting out, and we finish work and meet back at our little apartment and write screenplays in our 20s.
Oh my gosh, that is truly like the Hollywood story. I
It
love
is.
it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like him bringing home leftover steak from his steakhouse, and us like me watching him slice it and cook it for us, like we were two like alley cats.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. So, what is it like then working with such a close friend? What are the pros and cons?
I mean, there's not really cons. We're very lucky that we just really see eye to eye on comedy and tone, and we have really similar tastes. Um, the only cons is like when we get together with our families, our wives don't like that we have too much of a shorthand, and we can just say like half of a sentence and make the other person laugh. And our wives are like, no, 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 we need more context. You can't just say Mr. Fripped and that's funny. But to us, it is because we're talking about our high school English history teacher. Um, but and the pros are just it's fun. It's still work. It's still a job, but one, I'm very lucky to get to have some success and get to do this for a living, and two, I'm very lucky I get to do with someone who I'm so close with.
Yeah, and with Ike, you worked on the Mindy Project with Ike and Mindy Kaling, of course,
Yep.
and Elaine Coe. You guys were all creators on that, and then
Elaine Coe is a credited creator on Running Point.
on Running Point, right? So all of you then kind of got back together to create Running Point, and how did that happen? Who, where did the genesis of the idea came from? Some of those characters are super interesting. Tell us how that came to be.
Yeah, well, I think Jeannie Buss and Linda Rambis, who Jeannie owns the Lakers, and Linda is her right hand woman. They run the team, and they're huge comedy fans. I think because they run $1 billion empire and it's stressful, they truly relax every night by watching comedy. And for years, they had felt that they had a funny show in their world. That these two women running an NBA team, the stuff they deal with is really unique. And they approached Mindy a few years ago and said just that, like, you should do a show about us. And Mindy took a shine to it, and she started developing it. And Ike and I were doing History of the World at the time, the sequel to the Mel Brooks movie. We did as an eight episode series for Hulu.
Yeah, I
And
was going to ask about that.
yeah, that was also just a goosebump, surreal thing to get to talk to and work with Mel Brooks. Um, and so Minnie developed it for a while, and she wanted to go a different direction. And Ike and I came aboard, and the three of us talked about the world and the characters and wrote the pilot, and that's kind of the genesis of it.
That's so cool. And it sounds like from what you just said, it sounds like Jeannie Buss was on board with it. So you didn't have any issues getting permissions to her
No,
story or anything like that?
no, yeah, Jeannie and Linda are so cool. They gave us so much access to their world, to the Lakers facility, to games. They tell us stories, and everything we pitch them, they just think is hilarious. And they're just such fans of the show and such great supporters. There was no, oh, you can't tell this, or you can't make me look like this. They're really just like a very inspirational jumping off point. We're not saying Isla is Jeannie or Allie is Linda Rambis, or this player is Kobe or LeBron. It's really just like they inspired us, with their world, and we kind of took Running Point and the LA Waves our own direction. But they've also helped us with funny stories, like in episode 3 when people think Isla has made out with a player. Jeannie told us a funny story about a rumor about her that was not true, and that kind of inspired us. So they're great inspirations, but they're also so great with everything. They're not worried about their image with the show.
Yeah, I was going to ask because you have so much experience in the sports world. You've seen behind the scenes all about all the different players and all the scandals and all the stuff that goes on in the business. And then this show actually deals with some serious topics of, within that industry. There's always some sort of scandal with some sports figure.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you do that in a funny way without, while still, being cognizant of the actual fact that those things happen, and how do you portray them?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a fine line that sometimes we have to walk. Um, and I think part of it is just Mindy, Ike, and I we're all so close. All the time we spent together on set of the Mindy Project, we just, again, like Ike and I, with Mindy, it's another person. We just kind of see like comedy the same way, so we're just always looking for the funny moment, which is kind of like a definition of comedy, right? It's cutting the tension in an intense moment. So, and then with my basketball experience, and Ike and I grew up, with the '90s. Chicago Bulls were such big basketball fans, and we have writers on our staff like Joe Mandy, who's a huge basketball fan too. So we know all the you know, stories and rip from the headlines ideas we can use. And then, and even like when even those stories in real life, they're pretty crazy. They're pretty wild stories. So they kind of lend themselves to comedy. So I think we just always try to, uh, you know, break them. I think the jokes are always going to come. I think, Judd Apatow always talks about, he writes a movie as a drama and the jokes come later. And like, we don't do it that consciously as Judd does, I think. But I think we always try and think about a story like, okay, what's the grounded, logical way that this story could play out, where the characters are acting at the highest level of their intelligence, and then it's always easy to pitch a million jokes in those scenes and make an intense situation funny, I think.
Wow, yeah, I like how you approached it. It's really thoughtful, yet you still try to have a lot of fun with it at the same time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the job.
Yeah. So how does working on something like, a broadcast show like the Mindy Project differ from working on something like Running Point on Netflix, which is 10 episodes in the first season versus, a 20 plus episode season on a network?
Yeah, that's a good question, because in a way, because you do the writing now completely before you start shooting, it kind of takes almost the same amount of time to do 10 episodes as it took to do 22, because yeah, it used to be you'd start writing, but in June, but you'd start shooting when only had been writing for 10 weeks, and then you'd write through March or April while shooting the whole time. So it takes, you know, 9 or 10 months to do 22 episodes, and it takes close to that with post production now to do 10 episodes. So in a way, it feels like a similar schedule. It's a little freeing to not have to figure out what to cut down to make the show 21 minutes and 12 seconds, which I believe by the time we finished on Fox was the running time you were allowed. It was used to be like 24 minutes, then it was 23, then it was 22:30, and then they're trying to sell more commercials, so you get it down to like
Mm.
21 minutes and 12 seconds. We have the freedom to do a 28-minute episode or a 24 or 26-minute episode. And there's a little more freedom to be more adult, to have more adult situations, to use some swear words. Um, but I think like the general concept of breaking good stories feels very similar. It's just about um, giving a character that you care about uh, a conflict they're going to have to resolve, and putting some emotional stakes behind it so that we're invested in it. So it feels like we're doing something very similar. Um, but the nice thing about Running Point, and I'm sorry I'm rambling a little bit, um, but the nice thing about Running Point was uh, with the amount of time it took to get a few things greenlit in terms of budget and schedule, and then the writer's strike breaking up our writer's room, the show had a lot of time to bake. We had a lot of extra time to think about it. We didn't just have the 20 weeks of writing that can feel pretty fast when you're trying to write 10 episodes. That's a short amount of time to write 10 new episodes. But we had the pilot. We had time to think about the show, think about the characters. There was a break here and a strike there, and we had like it feels like a year and a half with the script before we started shooting. So that maybe helped develop the show a little more than traditionally a network show where it's picked up in April or May, and then you're writing in June, and then you're shooting the show in August with a bunch of people who just started. And that's another difference between the two shows.
Yeah, that brings up the question of continuity from season to season. You've been picked up for a second season. Congratulations.
Thank you.
When you're doing 20 episode seasons or versus a 10 episode season, and the break you have between those seasons, how do you have any concerns about keeping the show continuity strong, depending on how long it is between your seasons appearing on the platform?
Yeah, the show came out, and it's done very well. So
Mm-hmm.
Netflix wants it to come back as soon as possible.
Oh, that's cool.
So we've already started the season 2 writers room this week, and we are going to go as fast as we can and have a expedited post process to deliver the show in early 2026 or as early as possible. And so continuity wise, you get all your cast back, and creatively in terms of continuity, I think we're really just making sure that we're not going to max out the characters, that we're going to bring back the characters that the audience seems to have really responded to, and put them in, again, funny situations with a lot of family and business conflict. um, and and we'll see. The season 1 ends on a bit of a cliffhanger with Justin Theroux sitting in Kate Hudson's desk in her chair. So it could just, in terms of like actual continuity, it could just pick up right there.
Ah, cool. It seems like the Netflix in this case is kind of almost like reverting back to traditional television a little bit. It used to be you get a show for 1 or 2 seasons and it get canceled, or you'd have a situation with a show having the first season and getting renewed, but not even appearing on streaming for a year or more,
Yeah.
and you'd have that delay. But it sounds like in this case, they're almost kind of like, we know this is good. We know the audience wants it. So let's make more now. So it feels like that's almost like more like traditional television.
Yeah, I don't have like hard evidence of this, but I do feel like word of mouth, what I've heard for a year now, at least, is that the streamers are finding out that audiences don't like not knowing when a show is coming back, or the audiences might lose interest if it takes, as you said, a year and a half or 2 years between seasons. And I think there's this urge to for audiences to know, okay, this show I like comes back, every March or every September, right? Like people want to know that the show they like is going to be come out every year or whatever the schedule that's possible is. But yeah, there is, which is great because it keeps everybody working more consistently instead of this not knowing, instead of the show comes out and, oh, we like it, but we're going to wait 6 months to renew it, and then we're going to delay the writers' room to approve the budget, and then the show comes out 2.5 years after the first season did, and you lose 40% of the audience because they forgot about it. So I think that's a great thing that everybody is on board with. Just making making good things more often.
That's cool. It might have something to do with the fact that this is, basically it's a one camera, a single camera comedy. So budget wise, it's not like making Lord of the Rings. You can actually crank it out pretty, affordably.
Yeah, yeah. We have an incredible crew. It's a lot of our old friends from the Mindy Project and people that Ike and I worked with on History of the World, and they've done this before. And yeah, we were very cognizant of the budget and doing it in a way that makes the show repeatable. Because as much as you might want to spend every dollar and get every beautiful shot and scene in LA and have thousands of extras and car chases, ultimately it's about getting to do it for a long time, and so you have to make sacrifices. But hopefully, but I think the show will be our director of photography, Marco Farnioli, is just incredible, and I think the quality is still there, even though yeah, as you said, we're not Lord of the Rings. We don't have a never-ending budget, but that's part of the sacrifice you make when you get to do something.
But I mean, if it's a great story, you don't need all that extra stuff anyway, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. We obsess over that kind of thing, and then that I think all my friends, back in Chicago or anywhere in the country, they can't they don't care, right? Like what the budget is. Like, do they like the characters and do they like the story?
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of story, do you have I mean, I know that, the person it's based off of is still alive and it's not quite biographical as, like, say, The Crown, but do you have, like, an ending point in mind? Like, eventually she's gonna, based on real life, retire and do something else or whatever? Like, or is it just we're just going wherever now with the story?
We kind of we're starting to throw up those season ending tent poles or signposts, and we have ideas about where seasons 2, 3, and 4 might end. We'd like to keep going. Right now we're only writing season 2. We don't have a end in sight, but we always want to think of great season endings to bring the show back for another season. So we kind of have fun cliffhanger endings for a few seasons going forward to keep us going.
Yeah, working with someone like Kate Hudson as your star, these TV shows that have these big, you know, previously, movie stars in them, does that change the dynamic of like how long a show runs?
Um, you know, I think historically, yeah, it definitely does. Um, Now, I would like to think, in a great situation because we make the show in LA. Kate lives in LA. She has kids in LA. If the show was somewhere else, a movie star or a very, highly respected actor might not want to spend, 6 months of a year somewhere else. So we have some advantages, just practically. And also Kate loves doing the show. She's a Lakers fan. She grew up knowing Jeannie Buss. She gets the world. She loves her brothers on the show and Brenda Song, her best friend on the show. She's really bonded with them, and she's really close with us, the executive producers, like Ike, Mindy, and me, and she's just incredible and so much fun and to be on set with, and I think she's having a blast. So I think she wants to keep doing it for a while at least.
That's a great situation then. I think that sounds really cool. But speaking of big stars, there isn't much bigger a star in comedy as Mel Brooks, who you got to work with on History
Yeah,
of the World Part 2. And I got to just ask, what was it like being in the writer's room with him? That has to be an amazing experience.
it was. I mean, I'm just got goosebumps just thinking about it again, because I think I called him my first babysitter, back in the day when my parents would, go out or have a dinner party. My brother and I would rent History of the World and Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles. and watch those on repeat. And we got to pay tribute to all those things. It wasn't just a history of the world. It was like we wanted to celebrate Mel. So there's lots of Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein and the producers references throughout the eight episodes. And it was just incredible to like be there with Mel and have him pitching us jokes that he'd been holding on to for literally 45 years. He had bits he'd thought of, oh, I thought it'd be funny when Lee surrenders to Grant at Appomattox, that he signs the surrender, and then he turns and his sword hits all of his lieutenants in the balls. Like, we hear coconuts. Like, and that's like a joke that Mel Brooks had thought of 45 years ago that we were able to put in the show for him a few years ago. And he's just the sweetest guy. And when we first met with him, he said he was only doing the show for health insurance. And
That's hilarious.
I was like, okay, this is it. He was like 96 years old, and I was like, okay, he's still the funniest man in the world. So yeah, he's just the best, and it was definitely a very, very rare career highlight to get to work with Mel Brooks.
Yeah, I had all three of those movies on videotape myself, so I know the feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great. Well, obviously you're working on season 2 of Running Point now. Is there anything else you're working on? Any movies?
Ike and I are writing a movie for New Line / Warner Brothers. And I can't say much about it right now, but action comedy. And we're developing a animated show for Netflix right now about the Old West. And but really the focus is doing this show.
Yeah.
This is a heavy lift, and it's really fun, but you got to pour everything into it.
Cool. Well, yeah, when you have any of those things come out, definitely come back and see us again.
For sure, I will. Thank you.
So if people want to follow you online, are you on any of the social medias?
I'm on Instagram, just David Stassen, and I guess that means I'm on Threads too. And I think I'm on Blue Sky. I don't know if I've ever done a Blue Sky. But yeah, Instagram is my main source of social media.
Okay, well, we'll put that in the show notes if people want to follow you. Until then, good luck with the show. And everyone else, do follow us on social media at WG Therapy and visit writersgrouptherapy.com for all our other episodes. And otherwise, we'll see you next time.